Your room there looks clean. Looks like there's no blood or phlegm covering the wall, so that's good.
Yeah. The floor, not so much. That's a bunch of boxes of books that I've been shipping out to people who buy books. But the walls are clean, yeah.
You mean people who subscribe to Borough Press?
People who subscribe, people who order from our website. Um, yeah, got the
So
whole
that's something that
operation.
they could check out at what, boroughpress.com?
Yeah, it's a website. Um, it's got lots of pages on it and links and content. But yeah, so I'm running it all out
A
of the.
wonderful and eclectic literary series that I've been a fan of for years. Um, the story I keep telling is when I left my literary fantasy camp at NYU, I kind of figured everything was going to slow down when I got to Orlando, and that's kind of exactly when your press was starting to crank out books,
Yeah.
publishing wonderful people like me, and like I haven't slowed down at all, although uh the last 2 months have been a little bit of a different story. I don't know that I've slowed down, but I know that our community has. Borough Press sponsors Loose Lips, a monthly reading series on current events that increasingly is kind of just a form of trauma bonding.
Yeah, that's what it's been like, I think. Yeah.
Started in 2016 before we thought every week and month was going to be some sort of dumpster fire.
Yeah.
Uh, so, heard any good jokes lately? Haha.
Nah,
So, how's life been in, socially distant self quarantining?
I think it's been interesting. I think it's finally I'm starting to acclimate to it. Like it's actually the normal way of doing things, and I'm happy and I like it. Like I don't even know if I want to go outside again, or at least to a building with other people. I've been going on walks and stuff, but I think for the most part, like I've seen lots of very poignant quotes, like literary quotes about how time, you know, will seem to not move at all until all of a sudden it's chugging along and years are behind you. And so I feel like I've been experiencing the contraction and expansion of time for the last month and a half, but also somehow finding little ways to carve productivity into an hour here and an hour there, and still manage to get like the same amount of work done that I would. So yeah, it's made me kind of question my own
Or at least
organizational.
that's what we're going to tell everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. 40-hour weeks. Oh, I did just get confirmation of we got a live breaking news event update. We've been doing if I may.
Go ahead. Yeah.
We haven't really done any virtual events since we had a whole book tour scheduled for Ariel Francisco's book, and in April that got canceled. And Alicia Sachin, her book comes out in June, her essay collection, and we're looking to do like a virtual event and a virtual launch. And I guess that's going to be with Kaveh Akbar, which will be really cool. So I've got an email with details that I'm going to read later, but look out for that, world. We're in the Burroughs in the virtual realm.
All right. So when this video posts, we'll try and have links to all that stuff so that people can follow up if they want.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So we didn't have a Loose Lips for April, and I kind of, despite the fact that I'm kind of worn out, I love the series, and I just thought it was my turn to be Sisyphus this month and push the rock.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit different because I'm not sure if people are writing about what's going on in the world today. I'm not sure I want to hear that. I'm sure I don't want to hear an hour of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I don't want to write about it either. Like, Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I know that satire is beginning to fail. Like, we're just so weary of the cognitive dissonance from the White House, for example. So it's not even enough to just deal with what is a trying and difficult situation, but actual misinformation and uh, incompetence would be too kind a word, but just trying to figure out what's so. I mean, I had a post on Facebook, uh, and at 10 o'clock in the morning, it sounded just, oh, I had such a dry wit. And then by like 7 p.m., I'm like, this actually is what someone supporting the president might actually just say.
Yeah.
And you really have to know me really well to know, I think, where the barbs in this. And so I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
I need a walk. I need a hug.
All those satirists who had a scene where the incompetent president was making his followers drink bleach are pissed off right now.
Yeah. Have you been getting writing done?
Yeah. Yes.
Have you
Um,
finished your degree, or are you almost finished with your degree? You're earning your MFA.
almost. I have one more
Almost.
semester. I'll finish in December.
So then you better be writing, damn it.
Yes. Yeah, I turned in a packet yesterday. It was a rough one because it's just, you know, a character and a scene that is I'm still figuring out. So it's rough. And so it's like kind of gratifying to hit the deadline, but also just feels like shit because I'm still in the woods. But I was able to be fairly productive. Like the first week, I think I just felt like, the first week of quarantine, I was like, fuck it, let's just take these entire days and lock myself in a room. And I was like really good. The next week, like poked at a couple things, mostly did work for Borough Press. Last week or the week before, whatever weeks are these days, the following week, a lot of thumb twiddling. And now it's been kind of like a little bit of writing, a little bit of Borough Press, a little bit of panic and despair. So it's really, I've got a diversified portfolio of things to do each week. Now I've really taken things. But yeah, what about you? I mean, what are you working on fiction-wise these days since the novel?
Well, I am sort of eating my insides out because I really want to be writing my next book, and I don't know exactly what I want to do for the next book. I have 2 to 3 projects that I know I want to work on, but until I have enough of the outline in my head or on the page, um, you know, it's one thing to not be sure of the integrity of the scene that you're submitting for your MFA because you've got a deadline, and it's the earnest effort that really counts. And most of the time, you're going to push through and make sure that you've got, enough conflict and enough development and enough human surprise and weirdness in what you wrote so that it's going to last.
Yeah.
And I don't mind if I have a day or two like that, but I can't write a book in which every day might be that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would normally have to wake up in the morning and yeah, I'm not good in the morning. So Guy Psycho, my signature character, I've been working on I do flash fictions from his point of view. They're called confessions.
Okay.
So they're kind of like these goofy blog posts that he might do. Those run in Bachelor Pad magazine. And so I'm working on the 5th one, and I made the mistake of putting the date on them. Like, this is when I worked on this bit, so I could actually tell, oh, it's been 10 days since I've worked on this, and it's a flash fiction, and it's really taking a long time.
Yeah.
But I think, like you, now I teach online, so nothing about my life has slowed down at all. If anything, things have sped up. And there's been some medical concerns in my family. Nothing too fatal, nothing COVID related, although COVID complicates everything medical. So yeah, I could see the ending from where I am on that flash fiction, and so it feels a little bit good. I've been actually typing on the typewriter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, if we're going to be quarantined, let's try and make it the early 20th century and just kind of get a feel for that.
Yeah.
So I'm getting some work done. I'm not completely satisfied, but I think I've also squeezed off a couple of poems too. One
Okay.
about killing cockroaches, because
Like the Lucille Clifton poem.
uh,
That's the
I don't
thing
know.
that
I'm not familiar with her poem. I'm just more
great.
familiar with the roaches in my house and how I don't want them in there.
A common struggle. Yeah, that's a great poem. I forget exactly what it's called, but you should check it out. Yeah, I like the term squeezing off a couple poems. It's pretty obscene.
Well, they were short.
Bottom of the toothpaste tube poems.
All right, so we're gonna just bop around and talk to a bunch of different writers. I'm trying to cover, some geography here, since that's something that we normally don't do.
I'm intrigued.
Ronan, I know I'm a few months late, but welcome to Orlando.
Thank you.
So you're the current Kerouac House resident. You're visiting from Ireland, and you wanted a lot of alone time to write in. So in some ways, you got your wish.
Yeah, in some ways, it's been kind of ideal. I kind of want to have this balance where I would do, readings and kind of more events and see Orlando and kind of do tourist stuff while also getting a lot of writing done. And I was wondering how I would kind of get the balance, but events have kind of intervened, and it's just I've been something the universe is telling me just work.
Just work. And so, how's that been going?
Really good. If I didn't understand it before, I've realized that I control very few things around me. But when I sit down to write, I get to control every single detail. So it's kind of nice to have these kind of blocks of writing time where my phone is on airplane mode, I shut out the outside world, and I get to control everything. And then I turn the phone on again, and I get information what's happening, and I realize, just stay at the desk. It's safer.
So do you think you're getting more work done than you would have gotten done without, the self-isolation that's needed, or about the same?
More. I found the whole thing has really focused my mind. As it happens, I'm working on a novel set in the near future called "There's Something Wrong with Us," where I have some, a bunch of people on a research station, isolated in Antarctica during a winter, and they're cracking up a bit because they think the world might be ending around them, and they're self-isolated, and they're going a bit stir crazy. So there's been a lot of inspiration in what's happening. I just wish the world didn't have to suffer for my art.
Well, I think it's been actually unseasonably cool here in Florida in April anyway. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be here a little bit longer than you had anticipated.
I'm not sure. Basically, I can stay longer if I need to, but I am due to fly out in about 3 weeks. But the only thing is that everything seems so up in the air with travel. I'm counting on. I'll be leaving on May 22nd if I can trust the Irish government, the US government, and United Airlines all to be super reliable, and the pandemic to be predictable. If I can't leave, then I have been told I can stay longer if needs be.
And so, how much more of the book do you have to write, do you think?
Quite a bit. I think it'll take me most of the year. I tend to put a lot of pressure on myself to get stuff done fast, but I know that that's a mistake. The answer is basically it'll take as long as it takes. If it gets done faster, then I think great, and if it needs longer, so be it.
But that's one of those things you really can't control.
Yeah. It depends, it has to be good enough, has to feel right.
I suppose if you don't care if it's good or not, then you can control that.
Yeah, then you can. But I think, the book is done when you can't make it any better, so if there's things, to fix it and improve, you keep at it.
And so, what was it like transitioning to Florida life? Have you been here before?
Never. I lived in Pennsylvania when I was a teenager for a couple of years. But yeah, I've never been to Florida. Been reading lots of books about Florida. I've been reading kind of the literature. But it's been funny because I haven't really gotten to. I've been here since March 1st, but I haven't really gotten the full Florida experience. Just because I'm only leaving to get groceries. So that's been kind of weird. I'm getting a lot of Florida from my porch. There's been an armadillo in the bushes. I saw a possum over there. There's a lot of lizards. So
This is a great porch. This is one of the great
fantastic.
porches of Florida.
Yeah.
And, have you been taking walks around the neighborhood? Because this seems like actually one of the more pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods.
Yeah, like I haven't been doing a lot of walks, like other than when I'm going to the supermarket, partly because I there's just something depressing about walking around to experience Florida without getting to do it with other people, and without, when I see people around, I want to kind of chat to them and get them to tell me about what Florida life is like, and it's that's
right.
not quite possible.
I'm going to get you that experience before you leave. I promise. There's enough space in my vehicle. If we both wear gloves and masks, we can go somewhere in nature and we can yell at each other from about 8 feet away.
Right.
If you want.
Yeah, sounds good.
I wish I could offer better. So what's the house been like for you? Has it treated you well?
Yeah, it's great. Like in Dublin, my flat is probably it's maybe 3 or 4 times smaller than this, so I have all the space. And I'm coming from a climate that's crappier. So here it's like full of light, and and it's kind of nice just knowing that you're in a place that lots of other writers have spent time. That Kerouac lived here, so it kind of makes it all seem possible, the writing endeavor.
Yeah, your flat is probably about as big as the section of the house that Jack lived in when he was here.
Yeah,
that
much,
area in the back. So which part of the house do you write in?
I take the desk at the very back corner. I move around a little bit, but that's kind of the mainstay.
All right, we've got a classic Florida situation. Please stop and give a car.
Yeah.
Hi, Dallas. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to talk with you.
Yeah, so The Drunken Odyssey, it's not quite in the grandfather category of podcasts, but we're coming up on 8 years. And back in 2015, you had an essay on the show, and now you have a book out. And so I do feel, I don't know if it's grandfatherly pride. And of course, I had nothing to do with any of that other than to give, your words a little tiny space in 2015. But I'm really proud of you. So congrats on the book.
Thank you. I can't believe it's been that long. I was trying to remember what year it was, how long it's been since I was on the Drunken Odyssey. But wow, I love your podcast. Congrats on coming up on 8 years. That's a huge milestone. It's awesome.
Masochistic, endurance race. But every summer I come on the anniversary and then I kind of make a decision to re-up or not, because it is a real commitment. And I kind of miss having those essays at the end of the shows. But I tend to talk longer and longer with people. And 2, I just don't have the energy to be the editor that I used to be for so many up and coming writers.
Well, I'm glad I snuck in there when I did.
So tell us a little bit about your book.
I have a copy right here on my desk. I can show you. It's called The Best Week That Never Happened. It's my debut novel, and I like to describe it as a love story set in Hawaii with a little bit of mystery and magic about living each day to the fullest. And when I wrote it, I set it in Hawaii just because that's part of how the story came to me. I love Hawaii, and I've spent some time there, and it was fun to research. And one interesting thing with it coming out when it did, it just came out last week during this pandemic, is that people have told me they've really enjoyed reading it because they feel like they're getting to travel to Hawaii even though they're stuck at home. So that's kind of been something unexpected about it that I just hope is comforting or an escape for people during this time. It's fiction, but a lot of the Hawaii details, are from real life.
So it can feed their geographic imagination.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And one of the main questions that it draws up is this idea of a best week of your life. And so that's kind of been interesting, I think, for people to reflect on or think about a little bit right now, especially during this time that we're in. What a best week of your life look like for you? Would it involve travel or being with family or friends, or maybe just kind of an ordinary normal week, getting back to what we consider to be normal even just a few short months ago. That's, to me, looking pretty amazing, right now.
Well, I know I've been on vacations where at the end of the vacation, it's like, thank God it's over. Let me get back to work. So much more relaxing to just work.
Yeah, you got to do a lot on vacation. There's a lot of things to see and do and travel. And my book it just takes place over the course of a week, but it does have that sense sometimes when you're on vacation and you've only been gone for a few days, but it feels like it's been so much longer because the days are so packed with things that happen.
Well, and so much stimulus that you're not used to. So that it just feels more vivid, and your eye, like, I imagine if we were to test your eyes and how much activity they underwent, like it's probably at least double on vacation.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, taking in so many things. It kind of reminds me of I since we've talked last, John, I became a mother. I have a baby daughter, Maya. She's 17 months old, but I remember the first week bringing her home from the hospital. It felt like it was at least a month. I think so much is new. Even though we were in our same, house, it was like our lives are completely upended and we're taking care of this baby. We don't know what we're doing. It's all new. And yeah, it just felt like time was very strange in those early days.
Also, the sleep deprivation probably doesn't help a sense
Yeah.
of normal tick-tock of seconds going by.
Exactly. Yeah, everything's topsy-turvy.
From what I can tell, I mean, it takes ordinary people and makes them turn into Hunter S. Thompson not having a good time on drugs, but just, what? Huh?
Yes, yeah. And actually kind of thinking about the time that we're in right now with this pandemic, it sort of reminds me of that time. The days kind of blur together. You're just at home all the time, wearing your pajamas all day. At least I am. So I am sort of getting some flashbacks to those early days of parenthood when, just everything kind of felt off kilter a little bit.
So you're one of the authors who, like the pandemic really screwed up your plan for promoting your book and made you go the online route. So can you talk a little bit about like what that experience was like?
Yes. Yeah, it has been so just a very interesting time to be a debut novelist. My book sold back in the summer of 2018. So it's been a long time that I've been waiting and preparing, and so when when I kind of came around the corner of the new year, and it just has been so surreal to have this happen. But I mean, I think there are some silver linings. I'm trying to focus on being grateful because I can't control any of it, and so I think one good thing is I had planned all of these in-person events at bookstores, a little book tour. I live in California in the Bay Area. And so I had planned all these events at bookstores, which have been, I'm just saying they've been postponed, not canceled, but just postponed. So I was very disappointed when, my book launch had to be postponed. But I was able to shift and do a virtual book launch, which in some ways was really fun because I have friends from college and from grad school. And just family friends who live, all over the world, not even just over the country. And so it was nice that there were so many people that weren't going to be able to celebrate my book at a launch who were then able to come, and I was able to Zoom in a couple of my young adult author friends. And so it did really feel like a celebration. And I also don't know if just during this time when we all feel so disconnected, on the day that my book came out, I just received so many like emails and text messages and social media posts from people. And so I think I was just more aware and grateful for that connection. I felt so supported, and I felt like there was so much connection that I might not have been as grateful for it if we weren't in this situation. And also I think just it does put into perspective, you know, your worries about marketing and sales numbers and all of those things that I was so frenzied about, you know, back in, I don't know, January, March. Now it seems like, okay, hopefully the book will do well, but people have, you know, much bigger problems. So let's put that into perspective a little bit too.
And then to return to the masochism of writers, there'll be a next book. So
Yes, yeah, trying to think about that too, and then I'll always have, you know, I'll have a story from my debut. I'll be able to tell, you know, friends and tell my daughter that my book came out during the pandemic, and hopefully, I like thinking about the future when that is a story that I tell, when we're kind of back to a semblance of normal life. It makes me feel like this will just be in the past, something to kind of, I don't know, wave up as a badge of honor.
So right now I am talking with Todd Caviness, who is the founder of this reading series. And a little while ago, you scuttled off and moved further into the country. So here in Orlando, if you're willing to take, I don't know, a 10-minute drive, you can kind of see the country. And we certainly have country folk who kind of were here from before Disney and, you know, before we kind of became a tourist mecca. But you moved a bit further into the country. So, you know, what's your self-quarantine been like in Bradenton?
Oh man, my normal has not changed as much as everybody else's, I think. I mean, I worked from home before all this, and I'm working from home now. So the only big change is that my family is all here while I'm working. So, and I mean, half of the reason I moved down here, I really like being a dad, and it's good because I'm doing a hell of a lot of it lately. But yeah, so it's like I'm not going through as much of that stir craziness because I am frazzled for other kid-related reasons all the time now. But it's, yeah, man, frazzled is the word for it. I mean, things are getting bad. John, I've considered starting a podcast. That's how bad it's gotten.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You know, it just sounds fake whenever I tell people don't do it.
It's what I say. That's okay. That's what I say about fatherhood, and it all applies.
See, now that's advice I've taken. So, yeah. So, when did Loose Lips start? Was it 2016? Or was it the year before?
Man, I keep like trying to round up all my old Facebook posts, which is the only way anybody keeps track of anything these days. But yeah, that sounds accurate. 2016. Yeah. I don't know if you want the entire history. Most people remember it fondly from Little Indies, which is where it always should have been, to be honest with you. But it actually started life as a different reading, or at least under a different name, at a bar called the Imperial. And so that went about 3 months, and I thought it was going swimmingly. Everybody involved thought it was going swimmingly, except for the
venue?
Except for the venue, yes. Who found it, despite the fact that I told everybody involved that it was going to be completely based around politics. I think it got too political for everybody. So go figure. But when that happened, I was like, oh, thank God. So now I don't have to deal with the booker, and I already knew Will's Pub, everybody working there from hosting an open mic there for a couple of millennia or so. So yeah, I took it over to Little Indies where it fit nicely into that little cave. And yeah, no, and I'm really, I can't tell you, I've got to thank please thank Ryan and Jared for me for keeping it going in my absence for so long. It was just something I did because, because I was going stir crazy, which I'm sure everybody can relate to these days.
Well, it was supposed to be a lark, right? Everyone
Yeah.
finds something weird in the news and come up with
Yes.
something within 3 weeks, right? So, I mean, if you felt like you haven't been writing enough, well, this is kind of a shotgun wedding with a deadline.
Exactly.
Produce something, and it doesn't have to be the major story. And it used to be, okay, well, I have to not just, like, it's chess. I can't just choose whatever I find interesting. I also, okay, who else has been invited, and what do I think they're going to pick, and and there really hasn't been a lot of, hasn't been a lot of, people piling on to all the same topic. It happens here and there.
Yeah.
Every month gets harder. When it started early in 2016, it was unthinkable how 2016 was going to end.
That's really notable to mention. Yeah, we did start it before Trump was elected. I think
with
it was
the best of intentions.
With the best of intentions, and that nobody, and never in a million years could I have imagined. I mean, there was enough Trump bashing already by the time we were. I think by the second one, half of it was about that. But it fulfilled a different purpose for everybody. I know it did for me after November of that year. So, but yeah, it's really weird how it's turned out. And I'm telling you, like that whole anxiety that I put on everybody who I invited to this thing, I probably didn't help with that. Like I toyed with the idea of having everybody send me in their pieces ahead of time. But this is the first time I'd hosted a night that was curated. It was really, the last one I did was kind of fly by the seat of the pants, apart from a few one-offs here and there. And I just decided, I feel bad asking anybody to do anything. So I wasn't going to add, well, let me, act like I'm going to vet whatever you write. I wasn't going to add that on top of everything else. So I decided, screw it, especially after the first few months. It became obvious, even if people were doing the same topic, everybody always, I don't think I ever heard two pieces where it's like, oh my God, you wore the same dress. We're doing this in the exact same way. That never worked out that way. Everybody would come up with these wildly different interpretations of things,
Well, also every month,
yeah,
that deadline just creeps right up on you.
Yeah.
So if this was like a one-time thing, it would be easier to curate the actual content rather than just curating the talent.
Yeah.
I say the talent because you pick me some of the time. So,
man, no, I know how to pick the names, man. It was great, and I had a ready-made. Like you were always a go-to, and as I found, this was a way for me to meet the larger community of writers that was sort of building up while I was out of commission. I mean, this is my first fear of fatherhood. I had just left. I just left the newspaper, so I really felt out of the loop with a whole community that I used to have before. So I would actively invite people that I did not know, that I would ask Ryan or you or, the people at the Kerouac house, like, hey, listen, who do you think would be good for this? And I made so many friends in the midst of all this, and it really did. I felt like I was building some really nice ties again there, a really nice circle of drinking buddies, just in time for me to up and leave Orlando. So, this is very like me to build something nice and then blow it all to hell. Although, if everybody is still getting the same out of it in my absence, that is absolutely amazing.
So are you getting any writing done?
I'm copywriting these days. And actually that's the one good thing about the pandemic is I stay up a lot later anyway to get more done. My wife is on leave, so I've kind of doubled my output. And even though I wake up early, I'm like, I get my stuff done. And after writing like 5 of these internet ads in a row, I cannot possibly let that be the way I go to bed. So yeah, I've been putting a few poems out there. I've been toying with the idea of doing a fringe show sometime down the road. But, with the pandemic, that seems like a long way away. So I don't really want to jinx anything. But yeah, I have been writing a little more. I don't think it's actually going anywhere, but yes, I've been writing more.
Well, it's important. It can't go anywhere if you don't get something down.
True
So
that.
that's a start.
Yeah. And I actually have. I miss being at the paper too. And the funny thing I noticed recently, like, I'll have a cocktail or something, and we're
That
getting to the
sounds
point
very
now
surprising.
oh yeah. And I'm getting to the point now, I don't know if anybody else is, where I am reaching the back of the liquor cabinet towards the stuff that was given to me at a party 2 years ago. So I have considered, hey, say hi to John. I've considered starting a thing where I make recipes on how to use the liquor somebody got you at a party that you do not want to drink. I really wish I could hug everybody. Thank you so much for doing this, by the way. It's really great to see everybody virtually, or at least even think about seeing everybody.
Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, John. How are you?
I am underslept, but all things considered, I am okay. I've had some health concerns with my family, but nothing COVID related. So yeah, I'm a little underslept. Because I was teaching online before things went weird, I didn't really have an adjustment to make there. But life still finds a way of making me feel like I'm a little bit off balance. How about you?
Well, my story is really similar. Yeah, my family has a little stuff going on, some COVID stuff, but people are okay, so far. That's been a tiny bit worrisome, but it's in my extended family and here in Rhode Island where I am, it's not that bad, I mean, we're really lucky. And I too have been able to work online. I had to make the adjustment, which, I have some quibbles about Zoom as a pedagogical tool. But, everybody learned fast. So I can't complain, Yeah, I continue to do my job. I'm going to get to write a little bit starting next week, so it's all good.
So your writing's been backed up then?
Yeah, it definitely has been. I mean, I've been finding with the Zoom classes that the class expands outward to fill the available space. It's like the old traffic conundrum. Like if you build an extra lane, you will instantly have cars to fill the lane. So a lot of Zoom classwork expands beyond the class. Like the kid who's in Singapore or the kid who's in Mumbai, and you want to help them sort of traverse the thousands of miles. So there's just more work. There's a lot more work, and it spreads out to fill the day. And that's meant that writing has sort of taken a back seat, but that's about to end.
Well, I think I've done just enough writing to keep myself from, getting itchy. I mean that literally. If I don't get something done, then I just feel like whoever I need to be as a human being just isn't existing, and it doesn't have to be good. Nor does it have to be productive, like, oh, and that's going to get published in this venue, or this contributes to this, not necessarily that, even just something that might be something. Like if that's not even in play, I get literally itchy.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way. And the most that I can claim I've done was, write 10 lines about Zoom for the New Yorker, and then scratch away at this essay about, I've been just writing about the natural world and stuff that I can see in the backyard. Like we have in our backyard, as is often the case in the greater Providence metro area, a copper beech tree. And copper beeches are enormous, and they live, you can figure out the age based on the girth. And ours is in the sort of 3.5 to 4 foot in diameter range. Like, it's an enormous, enormous tree. So it's probably been there for a little over 300 years. So I've really been thinking about the tree and the way the tree lived through 1918, and the tree might even have lived through the quarantine in Boston of 17 whatever it was. Like, it's that old, So I've been trying to sort of scratch away at an essay about that, and that's, in my case, the only thing that's keeping me from going nuts. Yeah.
So it's the elder of the neighborhood.
The elder. And there are a number of them. There's like a stump of one next door, but if you walk around Cranston where I am, you can see them in every, 8 or 10 houses has one.
So how are you doing in Rhode Island? Because it's a little bit difficult for me to somehow, in my imagination, take you out of Brooklyn.
Well, it is for me. It's difficult in my imagination. But, I did go to school here too. So it's actually, just been 3 more years of the 4 years I already did. And it's quite a bit less, Providence in the old days was kind of like a Scorsese film a little bit. Like, it was definitely an organized crime aspect, and the downtown was, rough and tumble. This was in the 80s, the early 80s. And it's, it's less that way now. It's totally habitable. It has like really good cafes, a bunch of good used bookstores, a couple of really good new bookstores. There's one called 20 Stories. Do you know about 20 Stories?
I do not know.
Only 20 books at a time. So they curate like maniacs to have for amazing, like one table with the 20 books on it. So it's got really good bookstores, and it has kind of a, college town culture that's very livable.
Well, here in Orlando, there's just a lot of room to spread around, so that, my friends who are still in New York, like when they go out for a walk, they have to wear a mask, because you can't have thousands of people walking around the streets and maintain the 6 feet. That is like the minimum safe distance. And, that's if no one sneezes, where, here, as long as, you stay away from the mouse, there's plenty of room to walk around.
I've been thinking that it might be a pedestrian culture versus car culture thing a little bit. That the problem with New York and Boston, for example, is tons of pedestrian traffic, Whereas Providence itself, people drive quite a bit in Providence. And in part for that reason, Rhode Island's been the least bad of southern New England. And it's basically the same for us, I can walk around the block and probably not pass anyone. So, we're trying to be responsible about masks, but it's not like, you're gonna take your life in your hands if you go out the front door.
Right. I am a little terrified. I forget what satanic reason had me thinking I needed to go into a Walmart, but whenever I go by my local Walmart, it's like Black Friday in the parking lot, and it's just like I can't believe how many cars there are. And I'm like, okay, it's not, whatever it is, it's not worth it. I think I needed like hardware and groceries and like just this odd combination of things that made Walmart seem like a reasonable choice, at least in my imagination, until I got there. And then I'm like, no, this is, people need me. I got
Yeah, I know what you mean. I haven't done that yet. We actually ordered from Target, which turned out to be sort of a good decision, except that then we've had a tendency to want to, go crazy cleaning stuff fresh out of the Target box to make sure it's, hasn't been touched in a way that's problematic. But so we haven't gone to any of the big box stores, but I probably haven't gone out of anxiety of just the kind you're describing.
Well, one of the last times we spoke, like once the mics were off, you were asking me, your daughter was a big fan of Frozen, and you were asking me, okay, so what's the deal with Frozen and why is that a good movie? Because I was a safe person to ask, and I'm like, it's a pretty good movie. I don't know why it's the biggest animated movie of all time. Like that's a little mystifying to me. Turns out I like it more than I thought, but you are a family man now, and so I'm kind of wondering, no matter how good we are at being with our family, in times like this, it's a little bit like being on vacation, where it's okay, but the hours and the amount of time that we spend cohabiting with our families kind of force this readjustment, and it makes us more aware of the good and the bad things about family. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about Rick Moody, the Family Man.
Well, do you want to talk about Frozen 2?
I haven't seen Frozen 2.
Come on, John.
I
You
don't
say like Frozen 1 and you haven't seen Frozen 2 yet? It's
Uh,
easy. All you got to do is hit your Disney Plus membership and you'll have that one covered.
okay. The next time we talk, I promise you, we can talk about Frozen 2 if it's important to you. I'll make sure I do my homework on that.
I have to say, I think Frozen 2 is a markedly inferior film. Even though I'm probably in a crisis mode with songs from Frozen 1. I don't want to hear them anymore. Frozen 2 just doesn't have this, it doesn't have story coherence. For one, there's nothing frozen about it. There's virtually no snow in it. So it has all the problems of Speed 2, which you probably remember.
Well, from what I understand, people either think Frozen 2 is like perfect and amazing, or they have your reaction where they're like, this doesn't hold together. Whatever this isn't really holding together, which might be really interesting because it sounds like it probably isn't story that's driving whatever that movie is. And so when people have a really great and powerful reaction to a movie that shouldn't be good, I'm always fascinated by that. Kind of the way, one of your first dates with your wife was to see Avatar. And I just thought, what perversity led them to say, there's no way we're going to like this, let's go see it.
That's true. It was really bad. Well, at least we thought it was really bad. But the truth is, John, that mostly what I've been watching now in quarantine has been Peppa Pig. Because, I have a 3-year-old now, and he just really wants to watch Peppa Pig. So I've watched a lot of Peppa Pig. I know everything about Peppa Pig.
Well, apart from, having to watch these repetitive children's entertainment and getting more acquainted with Disney Plus than, you would have on your own, what's it been like, though? The family time, is it about the same?
It's hard. I mean, there's no, it puts you in a really bad position, when a lot of people, with 30 million out of work, which is obviously an undercount of a significant kind, it just, one feels really sort of like an unreconstructed yuppie to say anything amiss about family time at this moment. Is it, we had just gotten with our son to where he was going to daycare for, 6 or 7 hours a day. And I was having some work time really for the first time since he'd been born. So it's been a dramatic step back from that. And, definitely exhausting in a way that's sort of hard to fathom. I think, at some point, in 2021 or 22, we'll all look back on this and think, Was it a problem to spend a lot of time with my kid for several months? No, it was not a problem. You know, am I sometimes driven fucking insane? I am, but it really doesn't matter. He's just being a 3-year-old, you know, he's doing what 3-year-olds do.
And from what I hear, there will come a time when it's like, gotta go, Dad. Like, okay,
Yeah.
all right. So we can't always choose, you know, like when we get to luxuriate in family time.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, over at the Mouse, I'm sure I've seen divorces happen. And when I think of, you know, my own family vacations, that kind of partly led to me not getting tired of the place as a grown-up. Yeah, a lot of family anxiety and tension, but like the odd miracle of just a good moment, and not even a good moment paid for by Disney. Like just the grace that comes when you get to spend enough time with people and there's just enough space for everyone to find their own space and still somehow be together.
Yeah, I think you're putting your finger on something really important, and that is that, you know, that this time is not going to be boiled down into one reductive characterization, you know, and you can go crazy in the morning and that afternoon something incredible happens, you know. Like, it's been really cold here. It's still really cold. Like, it's been in the 40s, so it's really cold. But we had a quite sunny, warm day 2 days ago. And we went out on the deck in the back, my wife and my 3-year-old and I, and we made tie-dye, which, you know, I did it when I was 6. I haven't done it that many times since, you know. But it was bright, it was sunny, you know, we were in our yard, so we didn't have to wear masks. And Theo just fucked over Laurel's white blouse. Like, he emptied the red thing, the entire jar, like in one spot. But he had such a great time, and just the idea that we could do this and nobody needed us today. We'd already taught or whatever we were going to do. And it seemed to me, you know, stuff that we never would have probably done last year suddenly had, you know, such ramifications and so many more layers than it would have otherwise had. Like, a walk is the deepest thing right now, you know. So I think you're right. I think it's not that it's all pain in the ass. The pain in the ass yields, and then there's a moment of great clarity about how precious these few things we really can do together are right now.
Chad, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm worn out. I should be less worn out, but I don't know what should means.
Yeah.
So it was about a year ago. You were a Kerouac House resident, and we hung out a bit. And you know,
How the
I'd
world
say,
has changed.
well, I hope we're still friends. But
Yes.
yeah, a lot has changed. I keep thinking that every time the president speaks, like it's only so many miles away from you. I
Yeah.
worry about you, buddy. So
Thank you. I worry about me too. Yeah, it's about I don't know. I think the White House is maybe like 3.5 miles away from where I currently am. But in some way, I mean, I think DC has always been a bit of a weird place where there's people who you can live here and have a community and have people around you and kind of forget that the White House is there and that the mall is there because it's like that, all that stuff is together, and then you can kind of literally go in any direction and be away from it and not see it. I mean, obviously there are people in your social circles that work for politicians or for you know, think tanks and everything else that works for the government, including myself and my day job. But there is a way that you can kind of insulate yourself, just a way that you can kind of maybe you, John, I don't know, might not like to do this, but you can forget that, like, you can be in Orlando and not necessarily think about Disney. in some ways. And so I think that's the best analogy I can think of. But the president is still very much on my mind. I just don't necessarily think of him as being so close, but thanks for reminding me.
Well, probably both places have fractured psyches because, there is the day-to-day life, and then there is the psychic pressure of, the rumbling structures of power.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think luckily also, I think DC has been very good. I mean, at least those that I've been talking to and my social circles have been good about social distancing and staying inside. I mean, I think there are definitely pockets that obviously like everywhere that are not doing that, but I haven't, I think a lot of the disruptions of, I know that there was a big gathering on the mall, for instance, yesterday. There's like the Blue Angels flyover, which feels like a weird waste of resources when people can't get coronavirus tests. And
are they dropping masks down?
No, nothing. Just flying over so quickly that I heard it but missed it. But there are people who are, I guess, like really into planes and seeing them, and maybe that brought them some joy. But meanwhile, people can't get tested and people are dying, and hospitals can't get the equipment they need. So
I like how you try to find a positive, optimistic interpretation of the Blue Angel flyover. And I have nothing against the Blue Angel flyover under ordinary circumstances.
No, but it just feels a little bit like posturing on behalf of our nation's leader. But anyway, I'm not sure you came to talk about politics. Came, meaning called me or invited me to a Zoom chat.
Sure. There's sexual innuendo somewhere in there, but I'm
oh god,
hard enough to figure out where that is. I lived near DC for about 9 months, and by living near DC, I really didn't live anywhere near DC, but it was the biggest city that kind of had its magnetic draw, and so I know DC a bit as a tourist,
right?
And so my sense of it is either it's empty or it's crammed full. That seemed to be my sense of just what it's like to be there.
Yeah.
What does it feel like being there as a resident?
So today was like the first time I ventured out in a while. I know that where my neighborhood is generally pretty quiet. I live in a neighborhood called 16th Street Heights. But it has there's considerably less traffic. You see fewer cars, but what I've noticed is there's just more people on the sidewalks, just people running, people with strollers, walking kids. The parks are empty. No one's really obviously using those, but you see people out on their porches in their yards doing yard work, kids playing, with toys on the porch. I took a walk to Rock Creek Park, which is nearby, and it was pretty, it's huge, but there was a huge turnout. There were people racing cars in the parking lot, which was a little bit unnerving to hear coming behind me. But
remote control cars or car cars?
No, cars, automobiles, being driven.
Fast and the Furious.
Yeah,
okay.
Basically, except with less sexier cars. But I went, there's a few people on the trails with masks, and I kind of got lost because I went on a trail that I'd never been on before, but it was refreshing because having been in my apartment or my we have a backyard as well, and not leaving that for a very long time.
You have to get really drunk to be lost in your backyard.
Exactly, basically.
And you need to save those, for later because you don't know how much alcohol you can supply yourself with.
Exactly. So that was refreshing. But, I think, the couple of times where I have driven out, I have a housemate who, we've gone to the grocery store and that sort of thing. It's considerably quieter, in terms of main thoroughfares and that sort of thing. But like I said, I think, grocery stores are busy. There's lines around the blocks and for some stores, other stores, which I try to go to, which are a little, off the beaten path. or have done a pretty good job of keeping things contained and quiet. So yeah, how's everything in Orlando? Is it pretty like a ghost town, or?
No. Tomorrow so yeah, Monday, May 4th is when they're officially lifting the sanctions. But I tried to do a little bit of foraging today, and the traffic was scary, and I drove by a massage parlor that I sometimes go to, and it's like, they're open. And I'm like, what?
No,
Like,
no. That sounds like the worst idea.
It just
Worst,
seems like
absolute worst.
it seems like Florida's getting ready to go, hey, Georgia, hold my beer. Like, that's the feeling I get.
Yeah.
I got today. So like yesterday, I was feeling kind of groovy. Like most people are being cool. And today I saw some things that have really given me pause. And now I'm thinking all the stuff that people were doing early on, like just, okay, let's get everything, delivered, is now starting to look like a better option, when I kind of felt safe foraging before.
Right.
Like you go into the right store and it's like, as long as, like I actually hold my breath walking by other people, but it's not like, I couldn't find enough space to navigate around most people most of the time. And
Are you required
I'm scared
to wear
based on what I
masks
saw.
in public spaces or in stores? Like, so here, like you have to wear a mask to go into a grocery store or like a CVS or something like that. Is it the same requirement there?
Yeah.
Okay.
As for the enforcement of such, I don't know, but
Yeah.
most people are wearing masks in public now. When we take walks, it's kind of like, okay, there's enough room when you take a walk where you don't have to do that. Where in a city, maybe you can't do that. But yeah, I'm really fucking anxious based on what I saw today. If this is going to continue tomorrow and into the future, then like, okay, we flattened the curve enough, and now let's just see how many people we can let die. Seems to be what might be happening.
Yeah, no, I think there's so much uncertainty. I think about, I want to visit my parents at some point, but like the logistics of that, I'm afraid of going down, going to Virginia and seeing them and, bringing something with me, because, I don't have a car. So I would have to rent something. Public transportation seems like a terrible idea. So at this point, so getting there is something that I've been keeping in mind. I've been thinking about.
You don't have a bike?
Yeah, I do not have a bike, but given they live in the mountains and the distance, it would be a little bit. I'm just not, because today was the first time I did a walk. I haven't been doing the exercise, so I don't know if I would be able to do a bike that's like hundreds of miles.
In the mountains, yeah.
In the mountains, yeah.
Just bring some music; it'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I love a good playlist. Well, speaking of music, one fun thing I'm doing now, and I saw it on Facebook, but I was like, I'm not going to do this on Facebook. But it's like this 30-day challenge where you pick a different song per day based on some prompt. Like, I think the first day was name a song that you like with the color in the title and that sort of thing. And so I've been doing that with a friend, and every day, just as a way to sort of keep in touch and like learn new things about each other. And that's been, so I feel like this time, despite how uncertain and anxiety filled and just scary it is, there are these kind of moments of small joys. And I think that's like, and the same friend and I also like each day kind of ask each other, like, so what small joy, what has been like a small joy for you today? Because, there's just, I know that I get anxious very easily if I look at the news or the counts, trying to work also full time, of course. Writing has been a really big difficulty, been difficult to sort of stay focused on. So finding ways and finding like silver linings, as cheesy as it sounds, has been a great way to kind of connect and to realize that life is still going on, even if it's filled with uncertainty, which is like I like uncertainty and ambiguity in fiction, but not in real life. And so any way that I can kind of any small way I can try to find some peace and some joy in this time.
We try and dwell with ambiguity in fiction so we don't have to fucking do it in real life.
Exactly. I want to know everything.
Well, my next guest is Blair Hurley, who, full disclosure, we are alums of NYU. So go whatever our mascot is. I never learned what that was.
Woo, purple
and she's
torch,
the author
I think.
of The Devoted, which was a wonderful book, and we talked about that on the air. So where are you living these days? It seems like further north than even I remember.
That's right. Yes, I'm in a suburb of Toronto, actually. So I'm north of the border. I've been a resident of Canada for the past couple of years.
And it seems like your supreme leader now is enforcing a gunless state, which is going to be, I'm sure, a nightmare for you.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny to be an American in Canada now and watch the press conferences and everything. And so far, Ontario has been very organized in its response, and things are pretty stable here, I would say.
But how will we be able to, like go grocery shopping without assault weapons?
Yes, that's right. Oh, I almost forgot. That's right. They just passed this after a terrible shooting. There was an immediate response. They decided to ban assault weapons, and it has gone into effect. It's kind of amazing how there's a stimulus and a response. It's really nice to see.
I think as long as the government doesn't interfere with hockey, Canada will be okay.
We'll be fine. That's true.
So how has the situation been for you? So you're a mom now, and
That's right.
You're on leave.
Yeah, it's been such a strange time to have this world pandemic happening, because I had a baby in early March, and so I was already planning to be pretty much just holed up, recovering and learning how to take care of a child for the first couple months. So it's pretty much been what my life would have been anyway, except that really I have not left the house. My husband does the shopping once a week or something, and otherwise we just try to stay indoors. So our daughter's first couple months of life have been a funny one. I think this will be part of the legend of her birth. We'll tell her about it. She obviously won't remember it. But yeah, I've just been inside mostly, as most of the world has been too.
Well, and I guess this is one of those periods where everyone wants to come for a visitation to, behold the golden child, and
That's
it's your
right,
job
yeah.
to say nope.
It's true. So my father wants to come, obviously, and my husband's parents want to see the baby, and it's just not going to happen for the immediate future, of course. So technology really is a godsend. So we send a daily photo, we do video chats, and they love seeing the baby. So that's great. It would have been a very different lockdown situation just a few years ago, I think, when the internet was not quite so good. It would have been different. But yeah, with daily photos and chats, we're keeping up with that. It's true.
And so you're at work on something regarding this pandemic. So
that's right.
Want to read part of that for this reading series?
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to get back to writing as soon as I could. So I tried to start writing an essay about my experience of having a baby during this time. So I'd be delighted to read some. Should I go right into it?
Yep.
So I'm calling this essay Postpartum. And as I said, it's just about my experience having a baby this past month. She was born in the first week of March, and by her first doctor's appointment at 2 days old, the world had changed. Our doctor had been out of Canada on vacation and had to self-isolate for 2 weeks, so we were forced to take her to a walk-in clinic for her first checkup. By then, COVID-19 was spreading, or had been spreading for months, but we hadn't understood the danger. We sat tensely with our newborn in the crowded waiting room, fastened to her car seat between us, wondering what illnesses the people around us had. My husband and I are Americans new to Canada, still learning to navigate the surprisingly robust healthcare system here. I was on the edge of a titanic life shift, alone with my husband in a foreign country, and parenthood was another foreign place, its shores unknown. Those weeks, there was no talk of coronavirus besides news from China that seemed very far away. There were a handful of cases here and there in Ontario, but a growing whisper of threat among friends in New York. It was an abstract problem when, in fact, our lives were about to be changed intimately and forever. We didn't hear much about the virus for the 2 days that I spent in the hospital for her birth, fragile and bleeding, my husband curled on the couch, our new baby in a plexiglass bassinet beside us, fascinating and beautiful. The outside world was the view outside my window and nothing more. Parking lot, roll of muddy hills, watery spring sunrise. The world could wait. We returned home and consumed ourselves with learning how to feed her, diaper her, soothe her, overwhelmed and exhausted, feeling helpless and inadequate. The next time we came to the hospital, the procedures had changed. Now 2 nurses with surgical masks asked us to stop behind a red line while we answered questions about our travel history and whether we were showing symptoms. We sanitized our hands and went straight to the clinic. Don't touch anything, the nurses told us, their faces blank and inscrutable behind their masks. A nurse handed us a referral form gingerly, touching the paper with just the tips of her fingers, and I did the same, holding the other end. We sanitized our hands whenever we entered a room, tried to remember exactly everything we had touched. The lactation clinic was empty and dark this time, with just 1 appointment at a time to minimize exposure. We sat in the ominous quiet, and I spoke to my daughter, encouraging her to nurse. She looked so small in my arms. We tried not to touch our faces. We holed up as the injunction to shelter in place became cemented. We tried to enjoy our newborn in a haze of sleep deprivation and worry, tried to learn how to soothe her, feed her, rotate her in the bassinet so her soft, moldable skull would form the right shape. Tummy time while Trudeau and Trump gave speeches on the television. Changed our clothes when we went for groceries and wiped down the boxes and wondered what invisible dangers we were carrying with us. I hear from my friends now that for them and the millions of others sheltering in place around the world, that their days pass in a haze, alternating between dreamlike drifting through the day and heart-thudding insomnia. There might be no closer experience to this than the early days of having a baby. There are bursts of beauty among fear and worry and uncertainty. The minutes are long, the weeks are short. In emails and Zoom meetups, I heard from fellow mothers and the soon-to-be mothers. My pregnant friends were terrified. They were facing the prospect of not having spouses or doulas in delivery rooms, meeting their OBGYNs only by teleconference, learning to take their own blood pressure and self-monitor for signs of preeclampsia. These women wondered if they'd be laboring in surgical masks, struggling to breathe clearly, or if they contracted the virus, getting separated from their newborns. I remembered the instant sense of loss I felt when she was first taken from my arms. My friends wondered how their careful birth plans would be shredded to nothing. The postpartum period can be defined as broadly as the days following birth to a year or more after the event. A birth can seem like a cataclysm for the body and for the mind as well. My body is a postpartum body, and my world is now a postpartum world. We're living in a time that feels apocalyptic, both personally and on a global scale. In the night, I find myself rising when I should be taking my meager sleep, watching my daughter's chest rise and fall, both reassured and frightened as I see it continue to do so.
Hey, Greg, thank you so much for being on the show here. And how's California doing these days?
Well, John King, it is such a pleasure to be on the show. It's quite warm here. There's 2 people, well, a guy next door to me is doing a remodel of one of his rooms. So, and across the street, they're building a McMansion. So the quiet of the day is punctuated with the pounding and the knowledge that people aren't wearing masks and are working so close to you. So there's that. But we have a good governor, we have a good mayor, and everyone's pretty much staying put.
So I'm not going to talk about my governor,
No.
but you win.
Yeah.
The good news is here in Florida, in Orlando, there's kind of a lot of room.
Yes.
People think Orlando's Disney World, which is actually kind of west of
Right.
Orlando. So Orlando itself, also the neighborhood I live in, lots of older people. So yeah, it's actually been relatively calm, and it's been relatively cool for an April. So
Oh, that's nice.
yeah, I'm hoping that will keep up.
Weren't we at some giant theme park the last time I saw you? Where's the Hard Rock in Orlando?
That was Universal. Yeah.
Universal.
So
Right.
Universal, the Hard Rock Cafe and theater space there. Yeah, that's in between the two, Universal and Islands of Adventure. So you go
Islands of
100 yards in either direction, and you will be surrounded by roller coasters and candy and drink if you want it. But so how's Jennifer doing?
Jennifer's quite well. Thank you for asking. You know, she has a lot more mature than I am, so she can stay calm for a period of time and sort of take things in. Whereas yesterday I had to be scraped off the ceiling with a broomstick. So I'm a little better today. We just did this telephone thing with Kamala Harris. It's an off the record thing, but she spoke and people asked her questions and stuff. So that was kind of good because she's such a calm, mature adult force that she was reassuring. A proper leader with ideas and stuff.
Yeah, recently I watched the Hunter Thompson documentary, and there's a scene where he's torturing his poor minor bird. He's like banging its cage and yelling at it. And there are days I feel like I'm the minor bird, so I try not to.
Yeah,
try
right.
Not to be the minor bird.
Yeah, it's so. I feel like adrenaline is pumping into my liver every second of the day. You know what I mean? I'm just in a high state of agitation. I get out the phone and I start rage tweeting, and then I realize how futile that is. So then I go to the garage and I've been rereading, if you can believe this, Sherlock Holmes. And where's my other? Oh, I found a copy I got when I was in college. I'm reading Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde right now.
So have you read Kenneth Patchen's Memoirs of a Shy Pornographer?
No, but I was very intrigued by that suggestion, and I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it online from one of my indie bookstores around here if I can.
It's probably my favorite novel. I think you'll dig it.
Is it a detective novel?
There's a section where his ever-evolving, ever-transforming, phantasmagoric personality becomes a detective for one chapter.
Oh, it does sound like your kind of bag. There's a ever-evolving and phantasmagorical remind me of a little book called Guy Psycho, the Ziggurat.
Yeah.
You said that book was from the 40s?
1945, yeah.
Wow, and it's a shy pornographer.
That's technically true, yeah.
Wow.
But only technically true. It's actually a very innocent book, except when it goes in for satire. But Kenneth Patchen was beatnik adjacent, and just an all-around groovy, strange, surprising dude.
I was chuffed you suggested it because I hadn't heard of it before. James Crumley, my wife, turned me on to in the 80s, and it almost all takes place in the Northwest. He's got two different detectives. But The Dancing Bear, the one I was reading, just finished reading, is one of my favorite detective novels. There's so much violence and cocaine in it that it's just awesome. You feel like you're with Crumley. And Crumley was friends with like Warren Zevon, and he would kind of roll with that crowd. So he's big, burly sort of Vietnam vet who taught in Montana. What did I call him? In my book, I called him Chandler with snow tires.
Well, a little bird told me that you might be presenting a special coronavirus installment of your detective novel in progress, My Fist Has Two Dicks. Is that true?
Yes. If you don't mind, I'll read you what I've got here. It's very short. It's maybe a paragraph. And where did it go? There it is. Is that what you'd like? Would you like me to
I'd be delighted. Yeah.
Okay. Imagine some, sort of low-key hip-hop playing in the background here. The second wave of the virus was as merciless as a Hun crossing the Danube. The hospitals had only just had a quick chance to breathe. The armed militia Rona rallies that broke out in June after Orange 45 had flown to Saudi in the middle of the night had spread it faster than a Learjet full of billionaires. At least I had a job, a case. Find the asshole and bring him back for a bag of money. Times being medieval, I took it. The door to the marijuana dispensary was open, inviting anyone in, just like before the lockdown. The difference was the street was bleaker than a banker's heart. A light flower-scented breeze blew down the shuttered and boarded blocks. That's right, air was back in Hollywood. West Hollywood was a ghost town, this time with real ghosts. I was following a 30-something dude bro. He was shirtless with no mask, riding a skateboard. If there was a douchebag Navy, he would have made Rear Admiral. No care for others, no indication he'd ever even heard of all the new rules of what everyone called the new normal. He clattered up the sidewalk, sending an elderly couple with their masks and gloves, carrying a plastic bag full of canned goods, skittering into the street. He would be a pleasure to pulverize, COVID or no COVID. I pulled my Toyota up to the curb, the only time in history you could park wherever you liked in LA. He flipped his board up into his fingerless leather glove. He saw me jump out and said, "What do you want, boomer?" I answered with my Louisville slugger. My client wanted him dead or alive, so I figured halfway in between would work. He struggled weakly, but I have more hits than Mike Trout. He was gagged, trussed, in my trunk in less than 2 minutes. So much for social distancing. That's all I've got.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, which means I hear a lot of comedians talking inside baseball, and not having an audience is a problem. So how are you faring with not having, an audience right there with you? And I've seen, and witnessed this, where if an audience isn't going your way, you will beat them into submission and come along on your ride and actually enjoy your ride, even if they didn't think that was the ride they wanted. You're a force to be reckoned with. But I just wonder, are you an addict now, like just kind of crawling the walls because you don't have that audience? Or
partially, yeah. I'm a Libra, so I'm enormously shallow. Or as I like to think of it, reassuringly shallow. And I am Ming the Merciless with audiences. If they don't bend to my will, I generally slap them around pretty hard until they like it. Fortunately, over the last year or so, I've had to have a whole bunch of the operations on my eyes, and I had, glaucoma surgery, and I had a shunt put in my eye, and I had, you don't want to hear it. Anyway, I was unable to do as many live shows because of that. And my wife just joined the podcast as like a full-time partner, instead of sitting and listening to me, which you'd hear her do sometimes, or you hear me say, "Jennifer, what was the name of that artist?" And she'd yell out, Tintoretta or whatever. Now she's on the mic with me, and I think it's made it a lot better. I think the show's got more intellectual. She was sort of in charge of content before, but I was free to say what I wished. And now we're sharing the mic. A lot more of her insight, her taste in jazz. I think the music selection's gotten hipper, So that's how we do it. And her and I sit here, we have a drink, and we just talk into the mic together for an hour and a half. And
she can keep the show going while you go get a drink and freshen up.
Well, exactly. And we do. And then I'm doing a live stand-up thing tomorrow for a thing called Club Nowhere Club or whatever. These comics, we've had to be resourceful, and a couple buddies of mine, Ben Glebe and Steve Hofstadter, have been resourceful and immediately put this together, where you play for just about 300 people, I think it is, or you can if you sell that many tickets, and they watch you like we're doing, and you perform, and you have to wait for them to laugh. And I don't know how it works because I'm doing it tomorrow for the first time. And it's a really good idea because it's going to generate a little income. We have nothing coming in. My life is traveling as a ham. I don't have another livelihood. And if that works tomorrow, I think I'm going to try to do the podcast via that format, like once a month, so that I can return to some semblance of having a crowd to berate. And
well, if you're brave enough to, let 100 or so people do what we're doing now, you could actually, hear them laughing.
Right? So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to it because, one, I'm nervous, and I never get nervous. And two, if it works, I really do. I think the podcast is perfect quarantine entertainment, because I can sit here and drink and smoke weed in front of you, tell my bloody stories, and everyone can just sit there for an hour and a half and have their mind taken off of, you know, the whole thing.
Well, and one of the things that I love about the podcast, which is related to why I love your comedy, is, you know, you're not afraid to not be funny, and you will talk about philosophers, and you'll talk about Roman history, and you'll talk about the minutia of the American political system, may be a generous word, but situation.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, there's still dick jokes, and
Yeah, there are.
know, like this, the silly comic in you that probably got you into comedy in the first, like that hasn't gone away. So that, you know, it's always a surprising journey at some point along the way. And, you know, as someone who has been myself kind of curating a strange sense of culture by chasing down all the weird, strange people like Kenneth Patchen and so forth.
Yeah.
You and Jennifer teach me like other people I should go listen to. And so at 49, it's a delight that I'm not done yet, and that the history of the world has still produced so much wonderful work. And some of that wonderful work is your comedy as well. So,
oh, you're very kind, John. Thank you. And I think Jennifer would appreciate that as well. I learn everything from her, but she, you know, even this week, just this week, we were talking about a jazz musician named Henry Grimes, who had, you know, some severe psychological disorders, and he dropped out of the scene. He had a flourishing career, then he dropped out, and a social worker spent years trying to find him, found him, reclaimed him, and he came back and had a second act where he had gigs and the whole enchilada. And that social worker wrote us this week and said, I'm the guy who found Henry Grimes, and I love your show. And I wrote him back and said, you're a wonderful person. Is it okay if we talk about you more? Because this is someone who dedicated, you're talking about curating. He lifted this guy back up, and Henry Grimes passed, which is why we were talking about him, sadly, but he at least enjoyed that, I can't remember who said it, what writer, but in America Loves a Second Act, right? He enjoyed that second act where he got to go back, gig again, record again, and do his art. And it wasn't his fault entirely that he fell out. He, you know, he had personality disorders, and, you know, we all do. So the immediacy of the show keeps me going. Like you say, John, the learning something new all the time. If Jennifer finds something that she's interested in, you know, the next thing I know, there's like a volume, a deep dive, you know, and so I learn more than I could ever possibly learn from her. And you're so young. I didn't realize you were just 49, you little rascal.